Welcome to the Daily Current Affairs by CivicCentre IAS, where we'll discuss the top 10 important topics for the UPSC CSE Prelims for the date 4th March 2025 from the Hindu, the Indian Express and the PIB. So, the first article here says that India on Monday launched the Cities Coalition for Circularity, which is called the C3 in short, which is a multi-nation alliance for city-to-city collaboration, knowledge sharing and private sector partnerships for sustainable urban development. Know that this forum would provide a critical platform for policymakers, industry leaders, researchers and development partners to discuss and implement sustainable solutions for waste management and resource efficiency as economies in the India-Pacific region. In this context, we'll talk about the relevant aspects which are discussed in the article. So, now moving on, what is the 3R principles and what is about the circular economy? See, the 3R approach is nothing but the reuse, reduce and the recycle approach, which is a key strategy for the waste minimization and resource optimization. Now, what is this circular economy concept all about? See, this circular economy concept is all about first minimizing the waste generation by keeping the resources in use as long as possible, and secondly encouraging the sustainable production and consumption patterns, and lastly it differs from a traditional linear economy, which means it is all about take, make and dispose model. Now, what is the Cities Coalition for Circularity? See, this is launched by India in the year 2025 of March. So the key objectives of it are firstly, city-to-city collaboration for sustainable urban growth. Secondly, private sector and policy partnerships for circular economy. And lastly, it's about the knowledge sharing on the best practices in the waste management. Then we have something called as the City Investments to Innovate, Integrate and Sustain, in short called the CITIIS 2.0. Now, what is the objective of it? See, it strengthens the urban infrastructure with a focus on climate resilience. And secondly, it supports innovation and private sector participation in urban projects. Know that a memorandum of understanding for 1800 crore rupees was signed in Jaipur, which benefits 18 cities across 14 states. And we have something called as the Regional 3R and Circular Economic Forum, which was started in 2009 and focused on the Asia-Pacific region. So it aims to reduce the waste generation, enhance resource efficiency and promote sustainable urbanization. Here the related topics which you can refer to are India's SPHEREx Bharat Mission and waste to waste wealth initiatives. So sustainable development goals related to waste management, circular economy, and India's extended producer responsibility rules for the plastic and electronic waste. Then the Smart Cities Mission and its role in the urban sustainability. And lastly, the Paris Agreement COP discussions, 28 discussions on SDGs. Okay. Now, we shall move to the second article, which says that India has 6,324 Gangetic dolphins. 6,324 Gangetic dolphins across Ganga and Brahmaputra river basins and 3 Indus River dolphins in the Beas River Basin in Punjab, which is the country's first ever detailed dolphin population survey has found. So, conducted between the 2021 and 23, the survey covered 8,406 long stretches of Ganga and Brahmaputra river basins, inclusive of its tributaries, and a 101 kilometer long stretch of Beas River. Now, in this context, we shall talk about the Gangetic and Indus River dolphins, and then we'll talk about the findings of the report and briefly about the Project Dolphin. Okay, so where do we find these dolphins? See, they are primarily found in the freshwater river systems like the Ganga, Brahmaputra and Beas. Talking about their conservation status, so they are listed as endangered under the IUCN Red List. They are listed in the Appendix 1, which means it is provided the highest protection level under the CITES, and then it is listed under Schedule 1 of the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. Now, what did we find from the survey? So the survey said that the total Gangetic dolphin population stood at 6,324, where in the Ganga basin they were 5,689 and in the Brahmaputra river basin they were 635. And also the total Indus dolphin population was 3 in the Beas river of Punjab. So these are the key states with the highest population, which are the UP and Bihar, and the lowest in the Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh. Now, we have launched something called as the Project Dolphin for their conservation. So what is it? See, this was launched by Prime Minister Narendra Modi on 15th August of 2020. Now, what does it aim to do? Firstly, it was about protecting and restoring the river dolphin habitats. Secondly, to reduce the river pollution and human activities threatening the dolphins. And lastly, to engage the local communities in dolphin conservation. Know that the implementation is coordinated by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change and the Wildlife Institute of India, in short called the WII. Now, what is the role of rivers or the river morphology with respect to the conservation? Means why the Ganga and Brahmaputra are important for the conservation of these dolphins? See, firstly, the deep and slow moving water of these rivers favors the dolphin habitat and ultimately contributing to their conservation, right? And secondly, we have their tributaries. So these tributaries enhance the water levels in these particular rivers. That's why these two are significant. But there are few threats with respect to the river dolphins. The first one is the pollution. And how is this pollution is being caused? Because of the industrial waste and agriculture runoff. And second threat is the sand mining. Because of the sand mining, their habitat is getting destructed, right? And the third one is the dams and barrages, which disrupt the natural flow. They disrupt the natural flow of the water. So these are the threats to the river dolphins. So if you have to refer to the similar topics, you have to refer the Project Dolphin and try to compare them with the Project Tiger and Project Elephant. Okay. And the conservation efforts for the other aquatic species like the olive ridley turtles, dugongs, and also how the river pollution is impacting the freshwater biodiversity, and what is the role of Namami Gange program with respect to this. And you can also refer to the ecological significance of Ramsar sites and wetlands and dolphin conservation. And lastly, role of the National Mission for Clean Ganga in habitat restoration. Okay. So these are the topics you can refer to with respect to this article. And moving on to the third article, which says that the ISRO, Indian Space Research Organization, has released a second set of scientific data from the Aditya-L1 solar mission. So in this context, we'll talk briefly about the Aditya-L1 mission and we'll briefly touch upon the concept of Lagrange point, right? So what is this Aditya-L1 mission about? See, this was launched by ISRO on 2nd September of 2023, and the launch vehicle which was used was PSLV C-57. You can have a note of it. And this is the first Indian solar observatory mission. Now, what are the objectives of the mission? The first objective of the mission is to study the sun's outer layers, which are nothing but the photosphere, chromosphere, and the corona. The second objective of it is to observe the solar activities of the sun, like the solar flares, coronal mass ejections, etc. And thirdly is to monitor the space weather and its impact on Earth's magnetosphere. And you have to know that this Aditya-L1 is placed in the halo orbit around the Lagrange point of L1, and you have to note that this is 1.5 million kilometer away from Earth. Now, moving forward, what are these Lagrange points? See, the Lagrange points are the positions in space where the gravitational forces and the two large bodies, for this instance, you can consider the bodies as Earth and Sun. So at these particular points, they balance the centrifugal force experienced by a smaller object. But if you can look at the picture, we have 5 Lagrange points, right? L1, L2, L3, L4 and L5. But why did we choose L1 only? Why did we choose only L1? Because it provides an uninterrupted view of the sun and there is no Earth's shadow interference at that particular point. And moreover, it will provide a stable position for the long-term solar observations. Right. Now, moving forward, The key instruments which are used in the Aditya-L1 are visible emission line coronagraph, which studies the corona and the space weather effects. Secondly, we have the solar ultraviolet imaging telescope, which captures high resolution images of the sun's layers. Thirdly, we have the plasma analyzer package for Aditya, which analyzes the solar wind particles. And lastly, we have magnetometer. Now, what is the purpose of this magnetometer? This will measure the magnetic field variations because of the solar activity. Okay. Now, if you have to compare if you have to refer to related topics with respect to Aditya-L1, try to compare it with the NASA's Parker Solar Probe and ESA Solar Orbiter, and role of these space-based solar observations in predicting space weather systems, and also the impact of solar storms, and India's future space missions like the Gaganyaan, Chandrayaan-4 and Shukrayaan. And lastly, global space agencies like NASA, European Space Agency, ISRO, and Japan Space Agency collaborating on the solar research. So this is all about the Aditya-L1 you need to know. And moving on to the fourth article. The fourth article says that the tiger Zenith, which had strayed into Jharkhand and West Bengal before being tranquilized and brought back to Odisha's Similipal Tiger Reserve, he is expected to be released into a larger enclosure as part of the phased acclimatization process. Okay, so in this context, we'll talk about Project Tiger. Then we'll briefly look at the Similipal Tiger Reserve, and then we'll talk about the BOMA technique. What is the importance of this technique in wildlife management? Okay, so firstly, what is this Project Tiger? See, this Project Tiger was launched in 1973 by the Government of India, and it's being implemented by the National Tiger Conservation Authority, NTCA. So this was launched to protect the tiger habitats and ensure sustainable tiger populations. Secondly, to maintain the genetic diversity. So though we have tigers, we wanted to maintain the genetic diversity in different tiger reserves. Thirdly, to reduce the human-animal conflict and poaching incidents of the tigers. So recently a census was calculated according to the 2022. So according to the 2022 census, India's tiger population is 3,167, which is the highest in the world. Now, moving forward, this Similipal Tiger Reserve is located in the state of Odisha and is part of the Mayurbhanch Elephant Reserve. So it is primarily consists of the dry deciduous and the moist deciduous forests with grasslands, and you can find the Royal Bengal tiger, Asian elephant, gaur, clouded leopard in these particular tiger reserve. So why is this significant and why are we talking about this? See, it is the only tiger reserve in India where you have the melanistic tigers. So what are these melanistic tigers? They are somewhat black. The black color strips which you find on the normal tigers, these are more in this tigers because of the liquid or because of the enzyme called melanin. Okay, and also it is one of the oldest tiger reserves under Project Tiger, which was launched in the 1973. Okay, now moving forward, what is this BOMA technique? So this BOMA technique is an enclosure-based acclimatization method for reintroduced animals, and it is mainly used in Africa for herbivore translocation and predator management. So how does it work? See, firstly, the wild animals are kept in enclosures. They are kept in enclosures before the release into wild. So why is this required? This will help to reduce the stress and improve the survival rates post-release. And in India, it is mostly used for tiger, elephant, and deer translocations. Right. So what was the need for the tiger translocation in India, though we have so much population? So the main primary objective was only to enhance the genetic diversity and stabilize the tiger populations. So some of the major translocations were Tadoba to Similipal, which resulted in Zenith's translocation, then Ranthambore to Sariska, and then Panna to Satpura. So these are some of the significant locations. Right. So if you have to look at the related topics with respect to this topic, you can refer to Project Tiger at the rate of 50, Saiska and Panna reintroduction projects, and what are the lessons which we learned from that relocations. Briefly about the Kurno National Park and the cheetah reintroduction, okay, and then India's wildlife corridors and the importance in the large carnivores, and lastly human-wildlife conflict and mitigation strategies. Right, now moving forward. The fifth article of the day, which is the fifth article, it says that Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the Gir National Park in Gujarat earlier today, where he chaired the 7th meeting of the National Board for Wildlife. So, in this context, we'll talk about the National Board for Wildlife, its role and significance, and what were the key outcomes of the 7th meeting, and then we'll briefly touch upon the Gir National Park and the new developments with respect to it. So firstly, talking about the National Board for Wildlife, you have to know that it is chaired by the Prime Minister of India. Now, what is the purpose of this particular body or the board? See, it is the highest advisory body on wildlife conservation in India. So, it regulates the activities in the protected areas and issues clearances with respect to the protection in those protected areas. Furthermore, it will formulate the species-specific conservation programs. So this body is going to do all these things. Now, what are the key outcomes of the 7th meeting? So in the 7th meeting, the 16th Asiatic Lion Sciences was announced. Furthermore, the expansion of cheetah reintroduction to the Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat was also announced. Then a new initiative with respect to new gharial conservation was launched. And lastly, the Great Indian Bustard Action Plan was also introduced in this particular meeting. Alright, now talking about the Gir National Park. See, this Gir National Park is located in the Gujarat. So, it is the last habitat of Asiatic lions. That's what makes this thing significant. So, with respect to the success, with respect to conservation of the population, see the population increased from 523 in 2015 to 674. So, we can say that we were successful in conserving it. Furthermore, the community involvement was observed where the Maldhari tribes helped us with respect to it, right? Then also for managing the human-wildlife conflict, we used AI and GIS technology. Okay. Now, what are the new developments with respect to it? So the Bada Wildlife Sanctuary, which is there, to be developed as a secondary habitat for these particular species. Okay, and using AI, using artificial intelligence for tracking lion movement and also health monitoring of the lions, right? So this is about the Gir National Park. You can refer to the map for further details. So if you have to look at the related topics with respect to it, you can refer to Project Lion, you can refer to Project Dolphin, and expansion of protected areas in India and how is it done, and applications of AI or the artificial intelligence in wildlife conservation, and lastly wildlife corridors and landscape conservation approaches in India. Okay, now moving on to the 6th article of the day. It says that India's private sector manufacturing activity as measured by the HSBC Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index. We call this index in short as the PMI. So this PMI slowed to 56.3 on sales, growing the slowest in more than a year in February 2025. So the metric was 57.7 in the previous month. So in this context, we'll talk about the Purchasing Managers Index, in short called the PMI. So why do we have to measure this index? So this index stands as an economic indicator that measures the health of the manufacturing and services sector, and know that it is published by the HSBC and the S&P Global in India. So a scale above 50 indicates the expansion in the business activity, below 50 indicates contraction, and if it is equal to 50, then it indicates no change. Now, why is it relevant? What is the relevance of this index in the economy? So, this provides real-time insights into the economic trends in the economy. It will affect the investor confidence and business decisions. And lastly, it is used by the policy makers like the RBI and Finance Ministry to assess the economic health of the economy, to assess the economic health of the country. So, this is the purpose of this index. So, what is the impact of the high input costs on the manufacturing? So, firstly, it will lead to Cost push inflation. First, it will lead to cost push inflation. It will lead to supply chain issues. So RBI and government, RBI may adjust the monetary policy to control the inflation, whereas the government may revise the import tariffs. Government may revise the import tariffs with respect to it. So with respect to the industrial production and GDP growth in India, see, India's industrial growth is the key driver of the India's GDP. The manufacturing sector is the key driver, contributing to around 17% to the GDP. So these are the key government initiatives to boost manufacturing in the country. And these are the similar topics which you can refer to with respect to this article. Now, moving forward with the next article, which talks about the SPHEREx mission, mission of NASA. See, what is the full form of the SPHERex? See, spectrophotometer for the history of the universe, approach of reionization, and ISIS explorer. So this is SPHERex stands for this. So the objectives of it are, firstly, to study the origins of the universe by mapping galaxies across the sky. Secondly, to analyze cosmic inflation by measuring large-scale galaxy distribution. And thirdly, to detect interstellar water and carbon-based molecules which are crucial for the life. And these are the scientific capabilities with respect to the mission. Now, moving forward, what is the Big Bang Theory? See, the Big Bang Theory explains the origin of the universe, which happened 13.8 billion years ago. Whereas the cosmic inflation, whichever is there, it talks about the rapid expansion of the universe within a fraction of a second after the Big Bang. So what is the relevance of all this with respect to SPHERex? So this SPHERex will map the galaxies to test the inflation theories. Then it will analyze the fluctuations in cosmic background radiation. Thirdly, it can confirm if inflation was driven by quantum fluctuations. So we can get that confirmation with respect to the mission. So these are the different similar topics which you can refer to, like the NASA's James Webb Telescope, India's Aditya-L1 Mission, ISRO's Chandrayaan-3 and water molecule detection on the moon, exoplanet research and NASA's TESS and Kepler missions, and SpaceX Falcon 9 and India's private sector role in the space launches. Right. Now moving on to the next article. The next article here talks about the obesity, and which says that by the year 2050, India could have over 440 million people, obese and overweight people, according to a global analysis published in the Lancet journal. Okay. So in this context, we'll talk about the obesity. See, obesity is the condition where the excessive fat accumulation is observed in the body, ultimately leading to health risks. So what is the measurement criteria? So this measurement criteria is by the BMI. It is by the BMI where the measurement of above 30 or more indicates obesity, where the BMI between 25 to 29.9 indicates overweight. Now, what are the health risks associated with obesity? So you can observe metabolic disorders, you can observe cardiovascular diseases like the stroke and heart attack, you can observe the bone and joint issues, and lastly, it can lead to obesity linked cancers like the breast cancer, colon cancer, liver cancer, etc. Now, if you have to talk about the current statistics in 2021, we have 81 million obese and overweight men, whereas we have 98 million obese and overweight women. So what are the various initiatives with respect to India? So India took Poshan Abhiyan, okay? Then which the main focus of this Poshan Abhiyan is on malnutrition and overnutrition, right? Then the Eat Right India movement, which is a FSSI initiative which encourages healthy eating. Then we have the Fit India movement launched by the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, which is about promoting physical activity in the youth. Then we have the National Program for the Prevention and Control of Non-Communicable Diseases. And lastly, we have the Ayushman Bharat Health and Wellness Centers, where the screening for the obesity and diabetes is done. obese and diabetes is done. So we have alternatives with respect to BMI. But why do we need alternatives? Because the BMI whichever is there, it does not differentiate between the muscle mass and the fat. So the alternative measurements can be waist circumference. Waist circumference, which will be act as a better indicator for the abdominal obesity, and waist to hip ratio, waist to hip ratio, which will predict the risk of cardiovascular diseases. Cardiovascular diseases. So the similar topics which are related to this are India's National Health Policy of 2017, WHO's Global Obesity Strategies, and all these initiatives. Right. Moving forward with the next article, which is the 9th article for the day, which says that the Supreme Court on Monday said that time has come to consider the right against disability-based discrimination as a fundamental right, as it ruled that visually impaired candidates are eligible to participate in the selection for the posts under the judicial service. In this context, we'll talk about the right against disability-based discrimination. But before that, what did the Supreme Court rule in this March 2025? See, the Supreme Court recognizes the right against disability-based discrimination as a fundamental right. So, it declares the visually impaired candidates eligible for the judicial services selection, and it mandates a reasonable accommodation for the persons with disabilities. And these are the different constitution provisions with respect to the persons with disabilities. Right. Now moving forward, we have something called as the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act of 2016, which if we have to look at the key provisions, firstly, it defines the disabilities as the people, which includes disabilities with respect to physical, intellectual and mental disabilities. So also it provides a reservation in the government jobs, which is 4% for the PWDs, and it mandates reasonable accommodation and barrier-free access. Furthermore, it provides a discrimination in the employment, education and the public space, and it establishes central and state advisory boards for the disability rights. Now, what is the significance of this judgment with respect to the Act, with respect to the Act of 2016? So, this judgment ensures equal opportunities for the PWDs in judicial services, and it reinforces India's commitment to United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And furthermore, it directs the amendment of the Judicial Service Rules to comply with the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act of 2016. So this is why the judgment is significant. So these are the different topics you can refer to, which includes the role of judiciary in strengthening the fundamental rights and impact of SE verdicts on the public service recruitment rules. Now, the last article of the day, we have come to the last article of the day, which says that nearly 7 lakh olive ridley turtles laid eggs at the Rushikulya rockery or the nesting ground in Odisha's Ganjam district during a mass nesting between the February 16 and February 25th. In this context, we'll talk about the olive ridley turtles. See, they prefer to stay in the warm waters of the Pacific, Atlantic and Indian waters. Talking about their physical characteristics, they are about 2 feet in length. They weigh around 50 kgs and their shells are olive green and heart-shaped. Know that the lifespan is very uncertain, but they mature at around 14 years of age. You can refer to the picture to look at the olive ridley turtle. Now, what is this arribada or the mass nesting? So, arribada is nothing but the Spanish word for arrival, which refers to the mass nesting where thousands of female turtles gather on the same beach to lay eggs. And this particular thing only occurs in the genus Lepidophyllus. Okay, but we have some certain threats through this olive ridley turtles. Now, what is this threats? Firstly, the egg collection and hunting of adults. Egg collection and hunting of adult females. This is mainly done for the traditional consumption in some regions. Secondly, we have the bycatch in the fishing gear, which means accidental catching during the drowning, leading to drowning. Thirdly, we have the climate change and rising temperatures, which will affect the hatching ratio. right? And lastly, we have pollution ingested by the turtles. This pollution will be ingested by the turtles, causing fatalities. These are the major threats with respect to the olive Ridley turtles. So we have taken some conservative efforts. So we have taken some conservative efforts like the marine protected areas in India, like the Gahirmata Marine Sanctuary, and then we have introduced the turtle excluder devices. Turtle excluder devices, which are compulsory for the fishing vessels in India. Then we have come up with the coastal regulation zone guidelines, Operation Olivia, and community-based conservation, where the fishermen awareness and beach cleanup drives are conducted. So if you have to look at the other related topics to the article, you can refer to these articles, these topics. So in this video, we have discussed 10 articles in total from the Hindu, Indian Express, and the PIB. We'll be back again with another video tomorrow. Thank you.